let's just consider the impact of caregiving, and all of you who are caregiving probably know this and more. And there's, I'm sure, a lot more impacts than this, but these are the ones that get the headlines the most, particularly the emotional stress and strain. And you can take every one of the impacts and roll it up, and it all comes back to stress and strain. Because when we're having financial hardships, that increases our stress. If the caregiving is affecting our employment, that's going to affect our stress. If we're lacking the information or the support we need, that's certainly going to affect our stress. So we can readily say that stress and strain is the #1 area that's going to impact caregivers, and especially caregivers like yourselves, in all probability, where you may be dealing with a long-term disease, an illness, and the intensity might be greater, especially if you're taking care of an adult and a child. You've kind of doubled it. People with muscular dystrophy and muscle disease often have long-term care and intense caregiving. So it's good to consider and to pay attention to these impacts and be able to acknowledge where the caregiving impacts you, because then that will give you a better idea of what tools out there, what support out there might help you. So then let's just take a look at stress and how it might be affecting you and your caregiving. There's 3 areas I'd like to focus on, and that's stress overload, caregiver burnout, and a relatively new term called compassion fatigue. And I'll describe and explain each one of them. But let's come back to stress overload. You know, we all know that not all stress is harmful. We need to have some stress in our lives. It kind of motivates us, gives us energy, helps us feel a certain amount of aliveness, and helps us get things done. But on the same hand, we all know that when you kind of go over the edge of a little stress to too much stress, then it can become burdensome. Now there's 6 areas, 6 symptoms I'd like to describe that best explain stress overload. And here are those 6 symptoms. The first one is that you're feeling constantly exhausted, very anxious, and you notice that you're just tense all the time. The second one is you're feeling overwhelmed. The demands of the sick person, maybe plus juggling your own life with work, children, partner, spouse, maybe you have other social demands, are going to increase that feeling of overwhelm. And then if you're dealing with a loved one who has a long-term, very chronic illness, or perhaps it's a terminal illness, then it ups the ante on the stress, because you're having to watch a loved one, perhaps, you know, change physically, change mentally. Maybe there's behavior changes, their level of functioning. Maybe they don't even recognize you anymore. And then third is increased feelings of resentment, anger, and impatience. You know, we all have those qualities that we deal with every day, but when you find that you have an overload, it feels overwhelming. Anger is just coming out of your pores, or you're just so impatient, you might want to stop and pay attention. The fourth is feeling guilty. You may be asking yourself, gosh, is it normal for me to be feeling like this? Is it normal for me to have so many feelings? The fifth one is you find you're no longer spending good time, quality time with your friends. You might even be isolating a little bit. You might be just working so hard that you don't allow yourself time. And then the sixth one is you're not taking a good care and enough good care of your health. You know, maybe you haven't been to the dentist, you're not exercising, you're finding yourself, you know, emotional eating and eating too much sugar and such. Unrecognized and not dealt with, these symptoms can lead to burnout. So burnout is our second area of stress and strain. And here's a definition of burnout, just so you know exactly what it is. This comes from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Burnout is the condition of someone who has become very physically and emotionally tired after doing a difficult job for a long time. Now that probably, describes a lot of caregivers, especially, if you're dealing with neuromuscular disease. It may be a long term and it may be a difficult job. So you're on the edge of burnout, so you want to watch for that. And a cardinal symptom of burnout is depression, where you found that not only are you withdrawing, but you're really feeling down, you're feeling negativity, your energy is just really not working well. The other thing with burnout is you see a higher incidence of escapism behavior. So excesses of all our bad habits, such as too much sex, too much spending, drinking, taking drugs, even too much excess computer, excess of anything that's not a good habit is oftentimes a sign of burnout. And studies have reported that caregivers, when they get into a burnout stage, often feel a lot of negativity, and this negativity can affect your health. So when the stress goes up, physical health tends to go down. You tend to be more prone and open to getting illnesses. So by keeping your stress level, at a decent level, then you just automatically improve your health and your well-being. So the third one is compassion fatigue. This is a new term, fairly new term that's being used. It started out being defined in terms of war veterans coming back and they had been traumatized from the war, or people who've been through, disasters, big disasters, explosions and things like that, where there's been a lot of trauma. And here's a definition for that comes from the American Institute of Stress on compassion fatigue. It's the emotional residue of strain, of exposure, of working with those suffering from the consequences of the traumatic event. So if you're working with individuals who've had any kind of trauma, then the caregiver is apt to pick up that trauma and can actually feel that trauma and be traumatized by them. Where this is being used now in caregiving is we are now seeing what's called the sandwich generation, and I'm sure you've heard that term, and many of you are in that, where you're taking care of both young children and aging parents, or in this circumstance, in caregiving, you're maybe taking care of a sick child and a sick adult. And so you have a double load. And you're also then managing a heavy load with other challenges, maybe still work and other things. And so they're beginning to see this compassion fatigue showing up in caregivers. And I think part of that is because, in general, our society is becoming more and more stressful. Then you add the stress of caregiving, and if you're in a very intense caregiving situation, that can certainly be traumatizing. Both burnout and compassion fatigue can coexist, because burnout can kind of gradually morph into caregiver fatigue if the circumstances are right. So this is where meditation comes in. Now, meditation is not a cure-all. It's not a treatment. It's not an intervention. It's, in those terms, it's a complementary alternative to good health care. So caregivers in general should be taking very good care of their physical and mental health and doing everything possible to keep their health in a good state. Because, you know, if you look at the other side of it, you're the caregiver, and if you don't take care of yourself, and then you get sick, then somebody has to come in and then take care of you, perhaps, and the loved one. So taking good care of ourselves as caregivers is of prime importance. And then meditation can be a very good alternative, a very good complement to what you're doing already. And let me just add that if you suspect you're having feelings of burnout or maybe compassion fatigue, it's likely you would benefit from some counseling or some psychotherapy to help you resolve the issues. And then you could look into trying some meditation. I like Mother Teresa's solution to compassion fatigue. She wrote in her plan to her superiors that it was mandatory for her nuns to take an entire year off from their duties every 4 to 5 years to allow them to heal from the effects of their caregiving work. Now you're probably saying, well, I can't take a year off. You know, I've been caregiving for 5, 6 years now, 10 years maybe. I can't take a year off. But it just speaks to, even if you can't take a year off, it speaks to the fact that you need to take good care of yourself and take some time off when you can. Kristen McNeff is a PhD who's widely recognized as the world's leading expert on self-compassion, and she asserts that we need to have more self-compassion in our lives, especially when we are in situations such as caregiving, and we're giving out so much compassion and empathy to others. We need to find ways to increase our self-compassion. She tells us that self-compassion, and I quote her, acting the same way towards yourself when you are having a difficult time, or you're failing, or you notice something about yourself that you don't particularly like. So instead of ignoring your pain and having that kind of stiff upper lip mentality, kind of stop yourself and say to yourself, this is really difficult right now. I'm really having a difficult time right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this moment? What could I do for myself? So here's where meditation comes in. It's a tool, a very useful, practical, helpful tool that can help lessen the stress and strain of caregiving and help increase your inner self-compassion and that inner self-peace. So let's take a look at what meditation is. And you know, we all know really what meditation is, because most of us do meditation naturally. Now think about it. You know, at some point you've had a walk in nature and you suddenly look up and you see the expansive blue sky, and it's just radiantly beautiful, and you're just pulled into it, you're captured by it. Or perhaps like the pictures of the trees on the slide, you've walked in the forest and you see the sunlight trickling through the trees and the green and the brown leaves and the absolutely gorgeous tree, and you're just caught in that for a moment. Or maybe you see the sunlight sparkling on the water, or one of those beautiful sunsets over the ocean. Or perhaps you've looked into a baby's eyes, your own child or your grandchild, and you know you're looking right into a soul. Or perhaps you've connected with a dear pet and you feel that bond that exists. Meditation is good for you. It's a way to be kind to yourself. It's a gift that we really give ourselves. And most importantly, it's really being present to ourselves, being present to our life, and being present to the loved ones and the people around us. All right, let's look at the next slide and see what meditation is not. You know, if you've done much reading about meditation in the news or maybe on the internet, you've heard some of the skeptics say, oh, you know, meditation, don't bother with it. It's going to take your time and always going to be hard to do. And, you know, it's just a fad. It's a trend. It's going to pass. You know, don't bother with it. Or, you know, it's just sleeping. Why bother calling it meditation? Or it's probably daydreaming. Or maybe you're having an out-of-body experience. Back before meditation became much more well-known like it is now, a lot of people said, oh, meditation is religion. So you don't want to go there because they're going to sign you up for some religion. But, you know, meditation is none of that. And for me, I try to meditate every morning, first thing when I get up. And I find it's just a natural way that I can quiet my mind, quiet my restless body and mind. I can nurture my soul. I can retrain my brain. It becomes an important part of my self-care. It's just like brushing my teeth, brushing my hair, getting dressed, eating breakfast. You know, I wouldn't leave home without doing all those things. And so meditation is that. I wouldn't leave home without it. So let's take a look at a visual of what meditation is. So if you look on the screen, you'll see a mind jar there. That's what we call it. Yeah, the mind jar. And actually, the children at the meditation center where I teach and learn meditation, the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment in San Jose, California, the young children have a children's program where they teach the children how to meditate. And the children will make these mind jars, and they fill them with water and with glycerin and some other things to make it a little bit viscous, and they pour in a lot of glitter. And the children love these mind jars because then they take them home and they show them to their parents, and they tell their parents, now when I get upset, my mind jar is going to help me calm down. So if we're ready to
I'm so sorry. It's I'm having some problems with it. So
okay. Do you want me to just go ahead?
yeah, it's let me just, you know what? One moment.
Sure. Well, I can just say a few more things while you're doing that.
No,
As I said,
there you go.
oh, you think we're on? There we go. So if you look, when I shake the jar, notice how all the glitter scatters all around and just fills the jar. And imagine the glitter as thoughts in your mind, free-floating at any given time. Each one of us have hundreds and hundreds of thoughts, like that glitter, streaming through our mind all day long, whether we know it or not. Now, when I put the jar down and I let it rest, notice how all the glitter just very gently settles to the bottom of the jar and the water becomes clear. This is your mind on meditation. The thoughts, like the glitter, they don't disappear, but they just settle to the bottom. And that's how it is in meditation. The thoughts don't disappear. Your mind doesn't suddenly become empty and you've lost your mind or whatever. But the thoughts settle down or to the background. And then the calm stillness that is there all the time becomes evident, just like the mind jar. All right, thank you. So let's look at some facts and a little bit about the history of meditation. You know, as I mentioned in that previous slide, there's a period of time when people thought meditation was a fad. You know, particularly back in the early 50s, and the Beatles were doing TM meditation, a lot of movie stars and people like that. I think even some presidents, and they said, oh, it's, you know, meditation is just a fad. Well, the truth is the roots of meditation go very, very deep in the world history. What we know is they go back at least 5,000 years. That's the earliest written documentation. And we're pretty sure that it goes back even farther than that. History tells us that the hunters and gatherer tribes would stare for a long time into the fire, and they'd quiet themselves. Or they would go out into the evening sky and they would stand for hours gazing at the stars. That may have been some of our early meditators. And then, of course, we all heard about the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree and meditating himself to enlightenment. And the Buddha helped bring consciousness and awareness to meditation. And then in the West, though, the popularity of meditation didn't really take on until the early in the 20th century, when we had very eminent spiritual teachers coming from India and teaching us how to do meditation. And one was Paramahansa Yogananda, and he's known as the father of yoga. And he came to America in 1920, and he introduced millions and millions of people to the teachings of Kriya Yoga and the practice of meditation. And that form of meditation has continued to be is becoming more and more popular. So let's look at some of the more common types of meditation. There's probably 100 different types and variations of meditation, probably any kind of meditation you could find out there. But these are probably ones you might have heard about or that show up in the news and maybe are more common. The first one is concentration meditation, and this is probably the most ancient practice. It's where you bring your mind to single-pointed awareness or attention. This is the type of meditation that I was trained in and that I teach at CSE and out in the community. In this meditation, you draw your focus, all of your attention kind of inward, kind of turn inward and let go of your senses. And then you anchor that attention and that focus into the space between the eyebrows. Some people call that the third eye. Some people call it the chakra, sixth chakra. Some people call it the spiritual eye. But easy to just know it's right there at the eyebrow because you're directing your attention into the higher centers of the brain. So then when the mind wanders, which it will, you gently bring your attention back. And this becomes a practice. You bring your attention back and you let go of thoughts. Thoughts will come into your mind. You can't stop them from coming in. They'll be coming in, you'll be meditating, you'll be thinking about your grocery list or what you're going to do when you get home or got to make that phone call or check my email. Those thoughts will come in when you're meditating, but you let them go. You don't follow them and create a story and start responding to them, but you just let it go. You just let it go. That's the practice. You keep that one-pointed concentration and focus. This kind of meditation has very excellent practical applications because first off, we learn how to focus our attention. And this is particularly important in this multitasking, overstimulating, and distracting world that we live in. We're constantly pulled here, pulled there. We've lost our powers of attention and focus and concentration. This kind of meditation helps us get back and really get focused. It's also a way to let go. Whenever we meditate like this, we are continually training ourselves to let go of that thought, let go of that thought. And then in our practical real world, it's teaching us to let go of negativity, let go of those angry thoughts, maybe the irritations, so that you're able, when you're out there in the world working as a caregiver, you're able to let go of those thoughts sooner instead of later. And Think back to the mine jar when all that glitter settled to the bottom. You had all that clear space. So when we concentrate and we let go, we are making space in our mind. We're making space for something new to come in, something new to happen. And what that something new is not really new, but it's really our true self, that essence of who we are, that calm, peaceful person that is really who we really are at the very core. And then peace and happiness and joy can be there instead of the negativity. All right, the second one is mindfulness. Now, we all know mindfulness is in the news all the time, and I think we all know about mindfulness. It's really paying more attention. It's really bringing your awareness to the moment. As a meditation practice, it's that bringing your awareness moment by moment, and you allow the stream of consciousness to just flow. This kind of meditation brings clarity and insights. Then this kind of meditation got a lot of attention in the news and has led to a field of study and clinical intervention practice called MBSR, or mindfulness-based stress reduction. And this meditation, this form of meditation, is getting a lot of research right now, which is really good because it's out there in the mainstream. Top universities, top researchers are doing the research. This kind of meditation is a way to reduce medical symptoms and psychological distress. Vipassana, or insight meditation, is another ancient practice. It was taught by the Buddha, and it's been around for a long, long time in our culture. And it's described as mindfulness of the breath, and then mindfulness of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And in this kind of meditation, one gains insights into seeing things as they truly are. And the fourth kind is TM, or transcendental meditation. And you know, this meditation became popular here in Western culture in the 50s and 60s, and was very, very popular for many, many years, but has since, it's kind of lost its kind of glamour when all the movie stars were doing it, but many people still practice this kind of meditation. But unlike the most other kinds of meditation, TM doesn't focus on the breath or chanting or anything like that. Instead, it encourages a restful state of mind beyond thinking and allows for deep rest and relaxation to achieve a sense of inner peace. And then the last one is centering prayer. This was developed by a Trappist monk, Father Thomas Keating. He lives in Colorado, and I understand he's about 91 years old and still does some centering prayer, although he's retired from teaching now. He developed this method of prayer, of silent prayer, and this method uses a singular word, a sacred word, such as peace or love, and one keeps their focus on that word to stay inwardly anchored and focused. So those are the more common meditations, but you may be sitting back and wondering, if you don't know much about meditation, why should I meditate? Why should I learn how to meditate? What's its purpose? Are there any real benefits to meditating? You know, I'm busy enough. I don't have time to take on something new. You know, why should I meditate? Well, primarily you should meditate for personal benefits and spiritual growth. And many of these benefits, many of these benefits are now well documented by scientific research, as I mentioned, that's coming out of top-notch, some of the best researchers in the world, and from top universities, Harvard, Stanford, you name it. Almost every top school is doing research on meditating, and that's to our benefit because we get the benefit of that. And today, regular meditation practice is being increasingly recommended by physicians, psychologists, chiropractors, nurses, and other health professionals, and even teachers. The benefits of meditation are wide-ranging, and as I say, we're finding out more every day. Let's look at some of the highlights of the benefits that we might see in meditation. Let's stay there for a minute. Physical, and that's stress reduction. Stress reduction is probably the number one benefit and the number one reason that people today are meditating. And we certainly need a lot more stress reduction in our world, not just in this country, but in the world. But important, and so that's very important for caregivers. That's number one, stress reduction, and that's your number one impact is stress. But meditation also strengthens and increases the body's immune system, and this is important for caregivers because if you're stressed, your immune system is going to suffer. So you want to keep that immune system strong so you can combat any illnesses. You know, if you're showing up in hospitals and doctors' offices and out there getting pharmacy and groceries, you're being exposed to a lot. You need a strong immune system. Meditation helps relationships. And so that's a benefit to caregivers because you're constantly in relationship with the person you're caring for, with the family, with your own families. And there's also evidence that meditation may slow the aging process, especially cellular aging. I'll say a little more about that later. Mentally, it helps improve our focus and our concentration. It improves our memory. And I tell you, as we get older, we can all appreciate having our memory improved, even a little bit. You know, and I notice for myself that when I meditate in the morning, my day can just go any which way, but I'm much more able to focus and stay concentrating and be productive. You know, a perfect example is this morning. I had a little computer breakdown as I was preparing for this this webinar. And it was like, oh my gosh, you know, and then I took a few deep breaths and I said, all right, what do I need to do? And I got into action, took my computer to the repair shop. They couldn't fix it. I talked to my housemate. She said, you can use my computer. Leslie and I did some work back and forth, and voila, it all worked. And I felt like I was much better able to handle the stress of that immediate situation because of my meditation. I didn't get nearly as frazzled as I would have in the past. Emotional, and that kind of goes along with it. We're less reactivity. We don't react so quickly out of anger, out of impatience. We can stay more even-minded, and the more often we can stay even-minded, the better it helps reduce the stress. It helps us feel more peaceful, and then our loved one that we're caring for will feel that peacefulness. And the third one is spiritual. Meditation allows us to achieve higher states of consciousness. To go back to that mind jar and that place of peace where the glitter went to the bottom and we had that spaciousness. Well, when we have that spaciousness in our mind, it helps us to move into higher states of consciousness where we're not affected by the thoughts that might be coming into our mind. We're much more likely to be able to let them go, let them settle to the bottom. And we're in that higher state, we're able to feel and experience that happiness that's there. That joy is there, even in the midst of very intense caregiving situations. So let's look at some current research. I've been alluding to the research all along, so let's take a look at that. And I guess this is the area where it is so exciting because almost literally every day the researchers are coming out with, here's another way meditation helps, here's something else, especially in the area. What we know now for sure and almost with certainty is that meditation is good for your brain. Meditation really helps the brain. meditation tends to retrain the brain. And you don't have to be young for this to happen. They're finding this in older adults as well. So what the research is showing almost equivocally is that meditation reduces stress. And they're also finding that they've done some research with caregivers that it reduces their stress as well. And why that's important is because caregiver stress can be so prolonged and so intense. So if meditation can help that, you know meditation is doing a good job. It can help decrease depression. Now, they're finding now that meditation is able to increase the gray matter of the brain. And if you look at the brain in the slide, you'll see up there in the upper left-hand corner, it's pointing to that gray matter. What's interesting about this is, up until a few years ago, all the researchers were saying, you can't change the brain. Once you're beyond 20, your brain gets fixed. And you know, if you haven't learned it, done it, experienced it by 20, you're just going over the hill, and you can't really do much, and you know, you're just going to get old, and that's going to happen to your brain. That's not so anymore. Now they're looking at the brain and they're saying meditation can increase the gray matter, so that increases your cognition, that increases your memory. And I think it's just a matter of time when this is all going to break loose and we're going to see some really, truly amazing things. They're finding that meditation protects the brain from age-related changes. There's a study done at Harvard in 2009 that concluded that meditation is the most beneficial of the therapeutic alternatives for caregiving. So it was more therapeutic than anything else of the alternative or complementary medicines. At UCLA, they've done some research with caregivers and such. They've now offered a program there for caregivers, teaching them to do yoga and meditation. And while I'm not talking about yoga today, there's a lot of research out there that's showing yoga, like Hatha yoga, in combination with meditation is almost like a double effect. And especially for caregivers, you know, any of us who have to sit for long periods of time, yoga gets us moving, it helps us be flexible, and it also prepares us to be able to sit quietly for meditation. And I know, Leslie, I know you're involved in yoga, and I don't know if you wanted to say anything about yoga from your perspective.
Well, I guess you could say it is the only drug I take for my condition. Bad side effects.
Yeah, see, that's it.
Yeah.
No side effects, and you feel better for it, right?
Definitely. And it's, you know, it can be somewhat addictive, although I just do gentle yoga, but I definitely feel better when I do it. And if I go for a stretch a week or two without it, I feel less happy. My emotions are affected as well as physically. Everything's not working as well.
Right. And you made a comment about it might be addictive. Somebody wrote a book, a psychologist wrote a book a number of years ago about positive addictions. And saying that we need to put more time and energy into the positive ones and not the negative ones. So you almost can't overdo the positive ones. Especially in my book, you can't overdo yoga unless you really got excessive about it.
Right.
Other studies have shown, there's a recent study that has shown, is very exciting in the field of Alzheimer's disease, that meditation may actually slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease, and it also helps support the caregivers of individuals with Alzheimer's disease. And then lastly, a very recent study has shown that it provides support for patients with ALS, and also helps the caregivers. Now, where the meditation outcome is so important is because both Alzheimer's and ALS are both very chronic, very long-term, very poor prognosis outcome. But if meditation can prove to be some support and offer support to the patient and the caregiver, that's just one more, tool, one more thing that can help these diseases, and that will expand out into other diseases, into other muscle diseases. I'm quite sure we'll see more research. Now, there's just a couple other things I want to mention where meditation is showing up as being successful. I mentioned the program at UCLA for yoga and meditation. Well, Mayo Clinic also has a complementary medicine program for both yoga and meditation. And I think we're going to start seeing this because now we've got some of the top universities offering programs like that. That's going to start trickle down. And we're going to start seeing these kind of programs in our neighborhood soon. And I think that's exciting. Meditation is being offered in many of the public schools around the country, in both elementary, in high school, and colleges and universities with excellent success. They have a program up in San Francisco in which they went into one of the worst possible neighborhoods where their children experience constant violence, constant poverty, and a lot of abuse. And they taught them to meditate, and they got the school system to allow their children to meditate twice a day for like 10 minutes. And I think they call the program Quiet Time. And they found there was a greater attendance. The students were much more present. They weren't as distracted and daydreaming. They were much more excited about being at school. So I think that's exciting. And then CSE that I mentioned, the Center for Spiritual Enlightenment, has a program called Restore, in which we're going out into the prison system and teaching prisoners how to meditate. It's highly successful, and the prisoners just love it. They just absolutely love it. So the good news about meditation, regardless of the research, regardless of anything, is that meditation is free. You can learn to meditate. Anybody can learn to meditate. Free. It's easy to learn. And as Leslie pointed out, it comes with no side effects. Now, it does take some time and effort. It does take some practice. It does take a little patience. But the benefits and the outcomes are so well worth it. So let's look at caregivers in particular, and I call these my 4 R's for caregivers: the ripple effect, the regular meditation, the resilience, and the remembering. And I'll go over each one of them more fully. So the ripple effect is important. When we learn to meditate, we really don't even have to tell anyone else that we're meditating, because there's this ripple effect. Because when I meditate, I'm much calmer, I'm much more present, I'm much more aware to the people around me, and they notice that. And that has an effect. That has a calming effect on them. So as caregivers, if you're meditating, you're going to have a calming effect on the patient that you're taking care of. You're going to have a calming effect on the family that you're dealing with. You're going to have a more calming effect on your children or the people you interact with or when you go to work. It's the nature of meditation that when you are more present to yourself, you just exude that energy. So that's the ripple effect. And the next one is regular meditation. And this is essential. In order to have the benefits that I've talked about, in order to be able to experience this ripple effect and the peace and the calm, you have to meditate regularly. Just like Leslie said, You know, she goes regularly, and if she misses that, she notices it. Her body doesn't feel good. She wants to feel good, she goes and does her yoga. And I know for myself, if I, for some reason, have to miss a meditation, I miss it all day long. I feel like I'm a little off, and will get right back to my meditation. But it takes some practice to establish a regular, everyday meditation. But I'm not talking like you have to become the Dalai Lama and the yogi that sits on the cushion all day long, although you may want to, like Leslie, you might want to make it an addiction because you'll love it so much. I'm talking about meditating 20, 30 minutes a day, every day, 20, 30 minutes a day. Now, if you think about it, that's not a whole lot of time to give yourself, to give to you who gives so much to everybody else around you. You're giving this to yourself as a gift of love. It's a way you're being kind to yourself. It's a way you're being self-compassionate to yourself. And you're giving this gift to yourself so that then you can go out into the world and give the best of who you are and what you have. Even if you can't meditate 20 or 30 minutes a day, meditate for 10 minutes, meditate for 5 minutes, but do it every day and try to do it at the same time every day. And the good news with meditation is you don't have to go anywhere. You can pretty much stay in your own house, maybe just go off to a quiet room. There's a research study in Texas that showed just 11 hours of meditation. Now, not 11 hours in a row, but cumulative 11 hours of meditation will actually make visible changes in your brain, positive changes in your brain. Now, that's about 30 minutes a day for 21 days. And that's really how long it takes to change any habit. So if you meditate 30 minutes a day for at least 21 days, I actually recommend 30 days, just to be sure you have it sealed. You will begin to notice, you'll notice your stress level is down. Meditate for 3 months, and you'll have a lot of these benefits that I've talked about. Resilience. Resilience is a very important one because that's really almost at the heart of caregivers. Caregivers have amazing resilience. It's what sustains you with the work over time. It's what gives you that sense of satisfaction and able to tap into your own happiness, is that resilience, because you're strong in that, but you want to keep that resilience. Sharon Salzberg is a well-known meditation teacher and best-selling author, noted in a Huffington Post article that fostering greater balance of heart and mind is the key to resilience. Fostering balance of heart and mind is the key to resilience. And that one valuable avenue to cultivating this balance is meditation practice. Meditation helps us see our own difficult mindsets. So when we meditate, we actually have the opportunity to witness our own mind. We're the witness to our mind. We're witnessing the thoughts, the feelings that are going through our mind. The anger, the fear, the feelings of helplessness. And we do this with compassion instead of self-judgment or criticism or any blame. And this provides a refuge during life's storms by helping us connect compassionately with others, with ourselves, no matter the circumstances. Meditation helps us become more resilient. And then the last one, which is probably the most important one, is that meditation helps us remember our true nature, our true self, that essence of who we are. In the Kriya Yoga tradition, we teach that meditation ultimately leads to remembering who we really are beyond body and mind, beyond personality. We all have this true nature, this true self. And this true self knows how to be quiet, knows how to be still, calm, and peaceful. We've just covered it over with all the things of the world, and then we forget. Meditation uncovers that. It gives us that space, and it helps us remember. It gives us a pause in our day, and we can dive just a little deeper and remember who we truly are. I'll close with this quote from our spiritual teacher at CSE, Yogacharya O'Brien. She says this about meditation, very sweet and simple. Meditation helps us maintain our cool and stay even-minded while meeting the challenges of life. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being here with you today. Now we're going to look at some resources. Shall I talk about it, or you, Leslie?
Sure. I just want to thank you so much. That was wonderful. I really appreciate you, talking about meditation from, a health perspective and what the benefits for caregivers and just sort of a history of meditation, because I think there are a lot of, like you said, myths and misunderstandings about what's involved.